guys, my name's Dean Maisie. I'm the Gunsmith in Tauranga. I've been in business here for almost 20 years, and over that time I've fitted heaps of different makes of suppressors, as well as muzzle brakes. As most of you are probably aware, I'm also a well-established muzzle brake designer and manufacturer. But today what I want to talk about is suppressors. As an independent gunsmith, I get a lot of customers come to me and say, look, I've got a rifle, I'm thinking about fitting a suppressor. Also, what's the pros and cons of fitting a muzzle brake? Basically, I just sort of advise them it depends on initially the caliber and also what your intended use is. For hunting applications, in standard calibers like from 223 through to 308, 3006, and if you're bush hunting, then a suppressor is probably going to be a better option for you, particularly if you're hunting closer range or over a dog. And in those sort of calibers, 223 to 308, for most guys the recoil is not that big of an issue. If recoil is a major issue, then fit a muzzle brake. Hands down, a muzzle brake will work, a good muzzle brake will work twice as effectively as a suppressor. Okay, so fitting a suppressor, as we just talked about, for most guys, deer hunting applications, if you're only firing a low amount of shots, then yeah, suppressor is probably going to be fine. Actual recoil reduction, as tested on my recoil energy testing machine, is usually with a suppressor on a caliber like 708 or 308, is in the range usually of 20-30% recoil energy reduction. And that corresponds with what the industry standards are. If you have a look on Wikipedia, for example, that will be confirmed of other industry results. A lot of guys out there, and amateurs particularly, think that recoil reduction is about recoil force or peak force. A lot of suppressor makers or amateurs sort of tend to focus on that, saying, oh, we're getting massive recoil reduction, and trying to analyse what's going on in 1/200ths of a second. As recent results from an independent test in the States have shown, that is actually false. It's technically, you're only getting a longer recoil duration. For example, if the recoil impulse is in about I think it's 1/100th of a second, another third of that, so 1/300th of a second, the recoil time lapse is longer. But that's so quick, that's 100ths of a second is quicker than a blink of an eye, and there's no way that the average guy can realistically feel the difference in that. It's more about perceived recoil, but if you're looking for genuine recoil reduction and better muzzle control, then a muzzle brake will be better. All the suppressor does, essentially, it's a reservoir to hold and momentarily trap the propellant gas. And the other thing I sort of want to stipulate from the start is that all suppressors are not created equal. In New Zealand there is real tendency for guys wanting to go ultra light and ultra short, and that's fine, but you have to realise that it won't work as well as something that's got a larger volume and better internal design and construction. Basically, and also depends a little bit on the size of the cartridge as well. Obviously, if you've got something like a 223 Remington, you can get away with a small carbine length suppressor like that quite easily. Bigger cartridges like 308, 3006, 270 for example, then you'd better going to a slightly longer suppressor that has a larger expansion chamber at the rear, or one that's bigger again that has a larger expansion chamber at the rear and more baffles out the front, and you will actually get more or better suppression and better recoil reduction from a suppressor. Percentage wise, it's more the further ahead, more baffles you have further ahead of the muzzle. But the ability of an individual suppressor to suppress and reduce recoil is its ability to store that volume of gas, but the other thing as well is to pull the heat out of it, and also more internal baffles or better design geometry inside to slow the release of that gas as well. So basically main things are volume, gas cooling effect, and internal turbulence, or the ability for the suppressor to reduce that sort of rush of that stored gas back out of the suppressor. With a suppressor, of course, gas goes in, there's only one hole for it to come out. On something like a muzzle brake, for example, gas comes obviously out the muzzle, but it's then distributed radially through all these ports, and obviously the ports, in the case of my brakes, do push back slightly, so that gives a pull forward effect, so that cancels out a lot of the recoil effect that you're getting. With a suppressor you don't get that. It doesn't matter inside whether it's got a diffuser or a muzzle brake or any sort of angles. It doesn't matter, because it's not discharging out the side to atmosphere. The propellant gas essentially is all coming out the front hole, so you don't get, it's just physically impossible for a suppressor to reduce recoil as effectively as a good muzzle brake. So that's basically the first couple of points. Notes, type of materials. As I said, in New Zealand there's a tendency for guys to go towards lighter weight. In most cases that means high strength aluminium alloys that are tempered. Most of these, in most cases, are imported, like 7000 series aluminium alloys. They just simply aren't made here, and there isn't enough bigger market for manufacturers to produce them here. Stainless steel is an excellent choice for suppressors. The downside, of course, is the weight. Standard carbon steel isn't used so much now because of the risk of corrosion. They basically don't rust out. As suppressors are essentially a heat and pressure reservoir, they're also a moisture reservoir. As the propellant gases cool inside, the surface is literally drip wet. So anything that's got good rust resistance or chemical resistance characteristics makes a good material for a suppressor. Ideally, stainless and titanium are good because they don't need to be coated. With anything, you can just run them as bare and they'll do a really good job of pulling the heat out of the propellant gas. I suppose the downside with aluminium, for example, is it has to be anodised. 7000 series aluminium is a little bit prone to corroding, so it basically needs that protection from anodising and that hard skin to stop it from basically corroding out and basically turning to cauliflower. The downside with anodising is it's actually an insulator, so even though it's putting a hard skin on the surface, it is actually a slight insulator. So if you had two identical suppressor designs, one that was made out of stainless steel, for example, and the other one anodised aluminium, the stainless one would actually do a better job of suppressing, for the simple reason that it can pull heat out of the gas quicker, and basically that will mean that it's doing a better job of suppressing. Unfortunately, it will weigh 3 times as much, but it will actually do a more effective job. But that's one consideration when you're buying a suppressor or looking at buying a suppressor, is what your intended use is and what your weight limitations are if you have a weight limitation. As we've discussed, recoil reduction, one reason for owning a suppressor, but the number one reason for owning a suppressor is noise reduction. What can be achieved is, say, within practical limits, the bigger suppressor you can get away with, the better. We're obviously trying to keep within reasonable weight limits. A suppressor that's fitted to your bolt action deer stalking rifle that's too heavy, will obviously affect your point of impact and your point of balance. And if it's too long and there's a lot of weight hanging out the front, that's really going to affect your ability to shoot offhand, if you're having to shoot offhand. If your rifle's mainly being used for deer hunting in open country areas and you're just shooting off a bipod, then it's probably not such a big deal, and you can go quite easy to a larger type suppressor without having that issue. On the other hand, guys that are building the bush pig type rifles and wanting to run 16 or 18 inch barrel, 4 inches forward of the muzzle for the suppressor and say 4.5 back, trying to keep the overall size of the rifle down and the weight as well, then obviously there's a bit of compromise there. Yep, some suppressor or a suppressor is better than nothing, but bear in mind that some suppressors will literally work better than others for a given size. As far as noise reduction goes, once again, it really depends a lot on what the suppressor is made of and also the internal construction. My personal feeling is, from my experiences with testing them and what I've seen here in the gunsmithing shop, is that ultralight aluminium suppressors can be fine, for a guy that's only doing limited use, like 10-20 shots a year or something on his deer rifle, and not after the absolute best suppression. It's fine. The downside is that they just don't simply last as long as the stainless units, or in the case of the likes of the silence suppressors, which are a hybrid unit, they've combined mostly high strength aluminium component bodies with stainless steel internals, like your muzzle brake diffuser section, and also aluminium baffles but with stainless inserts there so that they don't chew out. So yeah, basically the design limitations of the materials with aluminium, you have to realise that it does melt between 450 degrees Celsius and 600 or 650. On the other hand, stainless steels, you're up to well over 1200 degrees Celsius before they start to go red and have any problems with the meltings after that. Titanium as well is also very good at maintaining its strength at higher temperatures. Aluminium alloys in general, particularly once they've been tempered, will usually maintain their strength quite easily below about 160 degrees Celsius, or below 180 at least. So most of the aluminium alloy suppressors, I usually tell guys, look, just particularly if it's not a bolt action, it's usually pretty easy to keep it below 160 degrees Celsius. You've got to try pretty hard to cook them above that. On semi-autos like the AR type rifles like that, and 7 or 30 round mags, guys can get carried away in a hurry and seriously overcook and destroy aluminium type suppressors if they're not careful. Tests that I've seen from the States, one 30 round mag through an AR-15 on a steel suppressor pushed the temperature up to about 200 to 300 degrees. Another 30 round mag through the same rifle in a short space of time later is pushing up to about 550 degrees Celsius. Well, aluminium melts at 450. That means essentially, if it was an aluminium alloy suppressor, it would have literally, the internals or part of it would have melted by the end of that second 30 round mag. However, on a bolt action and slower rates of fire, aluminium hybrid suppressors are fine. As I said, most guys, if they're going out deer stalking, might only be firing 1 or 2 shots anyway. But the ability for a suppressor to pull the heat out of the gas is also dependent on the actual mass or the internal geometry of the suppressor itself. In short, suppressors that are really, really light will heat up very quick. And what we've sort of found from some of the testing that I've done is that once you get suppressor 2 about that sort of 90 to 100 degrees Celsius point anyway, you start to see the vapor trail out the end of the suppressor disappear, because once the suppressor gets that hot that it can no longer cool and condense the gases, any moisture that's obviously on the suppressor surfaces internally is just boiling off straight away, so you're not getting that same degree of suppression once the suppressor gets really hot anyway. So from my perspective, I prefer customers to err on the side of caution on safety. I've seen a few of the ultralight type suppressors either wear out very quickly or actually fail. The internal isolated tubes and even the external tubes as well, I've seen some of those that have either bulged or split, failed at the threaded joints, or in some cases they're just glued joints, and in some cases they weren't threaded at all. And that's just basically it. So anyhow, I think that's covered the main things. The only other thing I would mention as well, AR-15 or even the semi-auto type rifles, fitting a suppressor will increase the operating pressure or the back pressure of the rifle. This is a muzzle can type suppressor. It just screws on there. This here, we fitted to this rifle as a test, is an adjustable gas block. What this does, real simple, has a little grub screw that goes in and blocks off. You can essentially regulate the gas flow through the gas port, which cycles the action. If you don't have that, you can get what they call overgassing, which is for the shooter. You get an excessive blowback of gas, which can come out, it obviously gets into your eye, but also cause the action to cycle too vigorously. That can cause premature parts breakage or just wear. Extractor failures are common on AR-15 type rifles, particularly where guys are running suppressors. So the easiest way to overcome that is to fit an adjustable gas block. They're quite affordable. There's a few different types. I think this one's a Seekins, but we're actually looking at maybe producing our own one in the near future if time allows. It's essentially what it does. It just means that you're regulating the gas flow so that the gas or the bulk carrying parts aren't slamming back hard inside the action and just working too vigorously. That's basically covered most of that for now. If I've forgotten anything, we'll try and add it in at the end. And next up, we'll talk about the silence suppressors and why I think one of the best new suppressor makes on the market.